Hey everyone, thanks for joining. We're just going to give it another minute or two before we kick off here just to make sure everyone can get in. Thanks. Awesome. I think we can get started now. Welcome everyone. Glad you could join us today for our 1 hour webinar, Top Trends Impacting Accounts Payable in 2024 and Beyond. I'm Sam Maxwell, part of the marketing team here at MHC, and I'll be facilitating today's discussion. Our speaker today is Mary Schaeffer, who I'll be introducing shortly. First, I'd like to go over several housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded, and attendees will receive a follow-up email with the link to the recording on our website. All participants are muted to prevent background noise, so please type any questions you have into the Q&A section. There will also be a post-webinar survey that will appear when the webinar ends. Please use the survey to let us know how we're doing and to request any additional information. That way an MHC resource can follow up with you. We really appreciate all that feedback. And before I hand it off to Mary, for those of you not familiar with MHC, we help organizations tackle digital transformation with speed and confidence using our solutions to automate the capture, transformation, and communication of paper and digital documents across core business processes. Our flexible end-to-end automation platform helps users eliminate tedious procure-to-pay and order-to-cash tasks, increase efficiency, achieve operational excellence goals, and strengthen relationships with customers and vendors. Awesome, Mary, if you just want to click to the next slide. Great. I can read through a little bit about Mary here.
They can read it. We don't
Okay.
want to bore them to teeth.
Works for me.
Okay. All right. So that's my bio. Thank you to MHC and to Sam for inviting me to come and talk about this stuff. It's a topic that I find very interesting, and thank you all for coming. There's my bio so that you can read it if you're having trouble falling asleep some night. So let's start off, Sam, with our first polling question. Which of the following do you think will have the biggest impact on your AP process in 2024? And honestly, I'm curious to see what you have to say. You guys have to say. So let's see. Okay. And eliminating paper checks. Yeah. Okay. I'll just give you a few more minutes to answer. But it looks like eliminating paper checks is winning this contest, if you will. I'm not sure winning is the exact right word, but automation and AI certainly are playing a role and more analytical. So I'm going to stop sharing that. And we're going to, I want to share the results. I'm sorry. Okay, so you can see eliminating paper checks, 42%, automation, 25%, and then more analytical work and AI neck and neck. And let me close that out. And you probably saw that. Okay, let's move right on. So I want to talk a little bit about the current landscape and then where we're going. And I'm going to talk about the current landscape in two phases, if you will. I call it the macro and the micro. The macro, I'm really talking about, the big picture and your company. I'm not talking about you in particular. So there's a lot of change going on. You didn't need to come to hear me say that, but I want to point out that some of it's real, and it is real, but some of it's imagined. And I'm going to talk about AI and what I think is real and what's not real as we go on. This is the year when it looks like the recession that everybody was worried about in mid 2023. It's the recession that never happened. It does not appear that we're in a recession. And then there's been so much hype about AI. Much of it is overblown, but, and let me want to make it real clear, there are some real implications for those who work in or manage or have responsibility for the accounts payable function. And your mission, so to speak, is to separate the wheat from the chaff, what is real and what is just a lot of hype. On the micro level, and the micro level, I mean you individually, it's leaving many people in the workforce today feeling a little bit unsettled. They're not sure what all of this means to them, all this AI stuff. I hope by the end of today, you'll have a little better feeling and have some idea about what it means for you. A lot of times folks aren't sure what the real issues are, what's real and what's not. Everyone's always afraid, oh, AI is going to take my job. I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think that jobs, almost everybody's job will change. If we look at what you'll be doing 5 years from now, I think it will be different. But this does not mean that your job is going to be eliminated. It's important, by the way, that you understand the difference and you figure out what the change is and how you are going to adapt to it. And again, I hope I have a little bit of information to at least get you on that first step today. So, how should you get started? Okay, you want to start off, you need to identify the change that is coming, and there is change that is coming. And you just need to identify what it is, and most importantly, of all that change, what are the trends that will impact your accounts payable, your procure to pay, your accounting function, okay? And which is going to impact you directly and what do you need to do to adapt. So that there's a lot going on there. I just want to give you one quick example. Remember that there was supposed to be a driverless car by the year 2020. Well, 2020 has come and gone, and we don't have the driverless car, and it doesn't look like we're going to get there anytime soon. So just keep that in the back of your mind, and as we go through this journey, as we talk about AI. So let's talk about what you came to hear today. You came to hear me talk about the trends that are impacting AI. So, and I think I have a dozen of them for you. I'm sorry, the trends that are impacting the workplace today. So trend number one, and I'd be a liar if I tried to say this wasn't the case. I call it AI on the forefront and this fear that AI is taking over the world. I don't think it will. I don't, at least not in the short term, but it will change the accounts payable function and a lot of others, but not eliminate it. So what I want you to start to think of AI, I want you to think of it as an aid or a tool. Just like you might use Excel, you want to think about AI in that manner. And most of us, by the way, have been using AI products for quite some time, although we may not realize it. Siri and Alexa are all based on AI. And a lot of the chat bots that you get in when you go on the internet and you get a help, a little screen comes up, they're chat bots. Now, I'll be the first to tell you that some of them are not, all that great, which is why I'm saying you don't really have to worry. Now, I call it AI on the forefront, and I want you to be careful. I mean, one that I use is ChatGPT, and I use that word "use" very loosely because Sam and I were talking earlier. You can't rely on it, okay? So if you try and use it, just realize it's a tool, but you have to go through it very carefully. And I have 3 stories I want to share with you. Hopefully, I won't take too much time telling them. The first one, when I first started with ChatGPT and it first came out, I was like, well, this is interesting. And I put in the query, if I wanted to learn about accounts payable, what would I do? If I was a new person to the accounting space and I wanted to learn about accounts payable, what would I do? And it came back and had 5 books that it would recommend that I read. And the first 3 were by me. And I was like, oh, that's great. That's nice. But then I took a closer look. And of those 3 books, I had only written one of them. And the other 2 books, they sounded like something I might have written, but I didn't. And I was like, well, I wonder who wrote these because I think I know a lot about what's in the field and my competition, and I never heard of these books. Well, I couldn't find those books. Then I thought, well, maybe it's an article that I wrote somewhere. Could not find it. So you need to check. The next thing, we moved and I was trying to get my furniture rearranged in the living room. And I have a 5.5 foot credenza on which we have a TV. And I wanted to, not a 5.5 foot credenza, unfortunately, it's 6 feet. And so I asked ChatGPT to help me rearrange the furniture. And it had me putting the 6 foot credenza in the 5.5 foot space. So I typed in, excuse me, but a 6 foot credenza won't fit in a 5.5 foot space. Can you please, readjust this? And it came back, it was hysterical. It said, oh, our apologies, you were right. A 6 foot credenza won't fit in a 5.5 foot space. Here is your revised plan. And the first thing was put the 6 foot credenza in the 5.5 foot space. I couldn't get it to change. The last thing, and this is really hones in on the world that we all live in, is I asked the ChatGPT. I had a little blurb that I had written, a marketing blurb for a webinar that I was going to do, something like this. And I said, could you make it a little bit more interesting? So I put it in, and it came back, and it's had something, something, something accounts payable. And then in parentheses, it had AKA accounts receivable. And I was like, no, it's not. And I would look like an idiot if I went out and used that piece. So just, if you're using ChatGPT, Bard, whatever, fine, use it, but take everything with a grain of salt and make sure that you check it over. Now, while all this craziness is going on, the rest of the world is not just sitting down, taking this with just watching. There is what I call a battle for control. There has been some pushback, both from the business community and other types of organization, other companies, organizationals, and governmental entities, as I call them, for lack of a better word. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of those. Well, I've already been talking about Microsoft and ChatGPT. Google has its own version, which is Bard. Also, Amazon. I want to talk about Amazon. If you publish books on Amazon, which probably most of you don't, you would notice that you now had to certify, you had to ascertain whether any of the material was created using AI. Now, do I think Amazon would be able to tell? At this point, I'm not sure, but there will come a time when you can. Also, YouTube has pushed back on the creation of videos using AI, and they are actually blocking those that are created using AI. So the example that everybody's running around with there is a video that alleges to be Tom Cruise promoting, I don't know what it is, and it was all AI generated, and I don't know how they can tell, but they can. Okay. Elon Musk, no big surprise to anybody here, probably is not happy with some of the things that are going on, and he has he's creating his own that will be on X, as he likes to call it. He's got some data that nobody else has. Some of it's, he's going to put the Twitter data in, which I'm not sure that's so great. But he also has a lot of data from pictures that they used when they were trying to develop the driverless car. So that's going into his version. So it should be interesting. Okay, lastly, the Authors Guild. This is on the, I guess, organizational front. The Author Guild obviously is concerned about plagiarism, which is a concern anyway, and in an AI world, it's really a concern. So the Authors Guild and 17 authors have filed class action suit against OpenAI, which is the parent, if you will, of ChatGPT in the Southern District of New York, for copyright infringements. So it just remains to be seen as to how that goes. On the governmental side, some of you may have remembered that in October 30th, Biden signed an executive order, and its goal was to ensure that America leads the way in seizing the promise and managing the risks of artificial intelligence. The executive order established new standards for AI safety and security that hopefully will protect. They don't say hopefully, by the way, that's my editorializing, which you probably got. America's privacy advocate and advances equality and civil rights, standing up for consumers, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. You may have seen that Chief Justice Roberts is also concerned about it. The EU has the EU AI Act. Originally, it was expected to be adopted in early 2024, and it actually was adopted during the end of 2023. I don't have the exact date right now. And it will provide a legal framework for governing the sale and use of artificial intelligence in the European Union. Its purpose, like over here, is to ensure proper functioning of the EU as a single market, and it goes on and on like that. So you can see that, that there will be some counterbalance, and of course, it remains to be seen as to how successful any of these initiatives are. But I suspect we're kind of like the driverless car. It's not going to take over the world as quickly as we would hope. Okay, I know you're upset, but I'm going to stop talking about AI. Just joking. Okay, trend number 3, heading towards a paperless accounts payable department. I believe, honestly, I like to say the dream is within our grasp. We've done a really good job of getting rid of those paper invoices. And today our statistics show that over 70% of invoices are not paper, at least when they're delivered. Hopefully, if you're getting emailed invoices, you are not printing them out. But this over 70%, which means only 30% or less than 30% are coming in by paper, includes items that are delivered through to a portal or through an automation solution. But of course, the majority of them are just invoices that are emailed in. And of course, today, a lot of the automation solution can take those invoiced emails and read them. We're not doing as good a job on the payment side. And as many of you realized, it is still a challenge to get rid of those paper checks. But we are seeing a move towards moving payments to mainly ACH, but also for smaller dollars in P cards. And we want to continue that push because paper checks are ridiculously expensive. Okay. I want to go back about and talk now a little bit about trudging up, I call it the paperless mountain. Or I probably should say eliminating the paper mountain, whatever you want to call it, okay? I believe on the invoice side, this is going to be much easier to achieve than on the payment side. There are clear advantages, not only for you who is receiving the paper invoice or the electronic invoice instead of paper, but the supplier who's sending out the invoices. The supplier saves money if they don't have to print the invoice, mail it, put it in the mail, pay for postage, and then follow up when it gets lost in the mail. Okay. But it does create the problem of duplicate copies of the invoice, and that is an issue. But of course, from the supplier's standpoint, they get to send them for free. So they're not as concerned about it as you are when you're getting 3 copies of the same invoice, and you have to make sure that you weed out those duplicates and you don't pay them. Now, we are not doing this in the U.S. I want to make sure they're clear. But if you are doing business in most European countries, in Asia, in South America, I believe Mexico's involved in this. There are what they call electronic invoicing mandates. I call them electronic invoicing initiatives, whatever you want to call them. Basically, all invoices in these countries must be delivered electronically through the government. And if you're scratching your head saying, I don't understand, why would they do this? It has to do with tax evasion and these governments wanting to make sure that they get all the information so that they know, they get the proper tax. We are not talking about doing that in this country. They're not talking about it, by the way, in the UK either, but the UK has had some representative at some of the European Union meetings, so they're a little closer than we are. If you're dealing internationally, you probably have had to deal with that. If you're not, just put it in the back of your mind. Okay, let's turn our attention to payments. First of all, for a country that's as developed as we are, and we hope to lead the world and all sorts of initiatives, especially when it comes to technology. It's kind of embarrassing that we are still relying so heavily on paper checks. In most of the rest of the world, paper checks, they exist, but they are either not used or only used very occasionally, but we still rely on them. And we're making some progress there, but we still need, obviously, with almost 50% of the payments still going out on paper checks, we need to make some advances here. The main, well, there's two problems as I see it. Number one, people don't like to give out their bank account number. And number two, it's the cash application problem. We have to get that information that is on the voucher that goes along with the check. You need to get that somehow to the accounts receivable person so they can apply the cash. But it benefits everybody, and we're making progress. But as I think 42% of you said at the beginning, that is your biggest challenge, and I think it's one that we're going to make progress on. Okay. Let's talk about accounts payable automation or invoice automation, well, whichever you're using. I believe going forward, although not everybody's using it today by far, its use will be a no-brainer. And the reasons are very simple. It's cost effective. The grasp is within, it costs an amount of money that every organization can afford. And the models have gotten much more user-friendly. There's none of this, taking 6 weeks to install. You've got to get, advanced training, etc. I believe that everybody eventually will be using this, just like everybody uses Excel today. Nobody would think of doing a complicated analytical process or analysis on a calculator. You just wouldn't do that, okay? But, and I want to be clear about this, this does not mean the elimination of accounts payable. Why? Because there's some things that are just not going away. Okay, yes, even if you get invoices electronically and you put them into, and it goes into an automated system that does the three-way matching, there are still going to be discrepancies, and those discrepancies are going to have to be resolved. Now, sometimes it can be done in an automated basis, but there's still going to be the need for a human intervention. Same goes with supplier inquiries. Even if you're in an automated system, you're still going to get those calls. Why didn't you pay us the full amount? When are you paying us? Why didn't you pay us? Did you get my invoice? You know those calls. You get them all. They are still going. You're still going to get them, and that you're still going to have the exception items, the rush payments, etc. And I'm not going to talk about this too much. There's all the regulatory reporting, which is only getting bigger. The 1099 sales and use tax, etc. So some of the transactional work is going away. I keep saying there's more things for you to do, and there are, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that throughout the rest of our time together today. There will be more analytics that's going to be expected of you, and it's easier to come by. And I'm going to talk about that in a little more detail on another slide. And whether we like it or not, there's going to be required increased regulatory compliance. We're not the only ones using technology. The feds are using it, the states are using it, and they're getting better at finding your mistakes. So we've got to get better at not making those mistakes. And there are new requirements. There are continually new requirements. The one that comes to my mind, which I don't think enough of us are concerned about, is the state 1099 reporting. An increasing number of states are having their own 1099 reporting requirements. And you're going to need to address them, whether we want to or not. Now, some of you may be sitting there thinking, well, we participate in the combined Fed-state reporting, so we don't have to worry about that. And that may or may not be true for several reasons. Number one, fewer states are withdrawing from that program rather than adding to it. So where we had 34 states in that program, we now only have 30. Also, some of the states' reporting requirements are not met by the information that's going to be turned over to them, because of course, God forbid, we all did things the same. No, every state has to have their own little nuance, And that just makes your life a little bit more complicated, but it's a job, okay? So that I see as the big push. So along this lines, as I've already said, we're going to have less transactional work, but there will be more. I want to talk just for a little bit about the fact that accounts payable has become a prime target for criminals in other countries mainly, but also some in the United States. I don't want to discriminate, for people who are trying to basically defraud your company of money. And so they continually come up with new ways, and you have to stay on top of it. And this is going to become critical because one mistake in this area can be $1 million or more to the wrong party. We're going to have less data entry, without a doubt. But data entry is not going to be completely eliminated. Why? Because some people are still going to send in paper invoices, number one. And number two, some of those invoices are going to have mistakes on them. And also sometimes when the OCR readers are very good, but they're not perfect. And so occasionally you'll have to go in and make data corrections. So what's going to take its place? One of the things, and this has been true for a long time, but we have not taken advantage of it in accounts payable, but we need to start to do it. Accounts payable has access to a wealth of data, all the payment data that the company makes. And we're going to need to start to do some data mining of that data to improve our accounts payable function. And I have more on this on another slide, and to help other departments. This analytics work will help you improve the accounts payable function. It will help you do things like identify duplicate invoices earlier in the process. And the earlier that you can identify them and then throw them out means the less time you have to waste processing an invoice that's ultimately not going to get paid. The analytics can also help you identify which, if any, of your processes are making too many errors, so that if you can identify that early on, you can go and you can do a little extra training so you can eliminate that. The next thing that I want to talk about it that you should be doing, if you're not already doing statement audits, you can start doing them. You should start doing them. And when you do them, you're looking for not only invoices that haven't been paid. Actually, you're not really looking for that. The suppliers will be very good about pointing them out, but vendor credits that you don't know about. And when you find those vendor credits, you want to be recovering them, which hopefully you're already doing that. But you also want to do a little investigative work around that credit to determine why did we get this credit? Was there a problem? Do we need to fix that problem? How are we going to fix that problem? And then fix it. And then, of course, we're going to have more and more regulatory compliance work. Okay, let's take our next polling question. How much time do you spend each month staying up to date and/or improving your skills? And for example, this session is one way that you kind of stay up to date and improve your skills. And how much time should you spend? I don't know. I don't have a good answer for you. All I know is it's more than 1 hour a week or a month, 1 hour a month. You need to be spending a little bit of time. Okay, so looking here, you're still answering. And it looks like most of you, and by most of you, I mean 58% are saying 1 to 5 hours a month. A good number of saying 17% both said it varies, but usually more than 5 hours, and an equal number said it varies, but usually less than 5 hours. All right, so I'm going to stop the sharing. I'm not going to share the results the second time. Okay, and stop sharing, and we'll move on now. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so let's talk about ourselves individually. We've talked a little bit about big picture, but now let's focus in on ourselves, because let's face it, if you're like me, that's what you're more interested in. You want your company to do better, but you also want to survive and thrive. And I believe that upskilling is critical, okay? No matter where you are in your career, even if you think you're way at the top, and many of you probably are, it's still important that you get new skills so that you can survive and thrive and hopefully hold on to your job and get promoted. So I want you to think about the changes that we've been discussing and other changes that you may see coming. Just because I haven't identified them doesn't mean it's not a change. You may see things that are likely to impact you. And when I say impact you, I mean professionally. I'm not talking about personally. And we really have to make sure we don't stick our head in the sand about this. Too often I hear people say, well, our company's backward. We'll never do any of that stuff. We're always the last in line for new practices. Well, that line is getting shorter and shorter. So don't stick your head in the sand. Okay. Then the next thing that I want you to do is identify areas that you may have an interest in, and your knowledge base is limited. Now, it's areas that you have an interest in, or also areas that you might need to know more about. You may not be thrilled about doing analytical work. Personally, I love numbers, so I don't really understand that, but I know not everybody does. But you may, so identify not only where you have an interest, but if there's a need. It's nicer if you can focus on the ones that you're interested in, because that's certainly a way. And then look for ways to expand your knowledge in this area. Coming to this session, by the way, was a first great step, but I'm going to have some other hints for you. And by the way, well, a few of them cost money, most of them don't, okay? So how are you going to upskill? So first of all, make a list of the areas that you want to improve on. Is it, I want to know more about accounts payable best practices. Do I want to know more about AI? Do I want to know more about automation? Do I want to know more analytical tools? Are my Excel skills not up to date? Whatever it is, make your list. Maybe it's soft skills, maybe it's management, whatever it is, working with peers, make your list. And your list is for you. Nobody else is going to see it. So you can put areas on there that other people might think are not important, but if they're important to you, that's good. Okay, as I said, coming to the session is a good first step. MHC also has a number of these webinars. You can look at their website for some of their past webinars. I know I'm going to do a plug from my colleague Lynn Larson. If P Cards was on your list, I know she's done I think at least 2 webinars for MHC, so you can look there. Now, next thing to ask yourself is if you've identified a course or a professional membership that costs money, will your employer pay for it? Don't automatically assume no. Many organizations will, and if you ask, they don't take that as a negative because it shows that you're wanting to learn. And even if they say no, maybe they'll put it in the budget for next year. So if you find something that will help in whatever area you want, as long as it will help your company also, ask. Now, obviously, if you decide, hey, I want to be a hairdresser, and there's this great hairdressing course, you're not going to ask your employer to pay for that. But as long as it's somewhat related to your job, ask. And then look for other resources, and I'm going to have some hints for you at the end. All right, fraud, okay? It's here. It's not going away. Criminals aren't going anywhere. They're smart. They know how to maneuver in. Anybody can be a target. Some of you may know Andy Cohen from The Real Housewives. He just got hit. They maneuvered around. He lost his debit card. I've got a story about it on the AP Now YouTube channel, so anybody can go and listen to it for free. But he came out and he spoke about it and he told you what to do and what not to do. Okay, so they're not going away and they're smart. Don't underestimate them. Accounts payable is the prime target and will continue to be the prime target. Why? Because criminals have figured out that accounts payable is, the gatekeeper of the money, and they want to try and fool the gatekeeper. Statistics from the Association of Financial Professionals showed that I believe 61% of the targets were accounts payable, 14% were treasury. So between the two, 75% of all targets came to those two groups, but mostly AP. You also need to continue to be alert for new frauds. No matter how hard you try, how up to date you get on the current frauds, if you're not alert for a new fraud and it comes out, the chances of you falling for it are high. So I like to say when it comes to fraud, two things. It takes a village, and be the town crier, or the Sally Henny Penny. One of the best and easiest ways to fight fraud, and this costs nothing, is to share information and to share it with as many people as possible and as soon as you hear it. And the reason is that if you share this information, then people will recognize it when it comes to them. For a while, there was a gift card fraud going along, which you may not have recognized, but as soon as you knew there was a gift card fraud and you got an email, supposedly from the CFO or the CEO or whoever, asking you to go out and buy gift cards, you'd recognize it. But without that, you may not. So as soon as you hear about a new fraud, share it with everyone that you work with, and all your colleagues. And I like to say to share that information too. As soon as we hear about a new fraud, we put it in our free e-zine, and sometimes I do a short video on it for the AP Now YouTube channel so that everybody can know about it. Okay, that's our best protection. It takes a village, but it's not the only thing you need to do. It's just one prong, but it's a simple thing. We can all do it, and this way nobody ends up getting hurt. Well, hopefully fewer people. Okay, trend number 8. Data analytics is becoming more important, and accounts payable can help other departments. They can work with other departments by providing data that will help them do a better job. Now, you need to be careful about how you approach this, because some people may get their nose out of joint if you position it in the wrong way. But I want to give you some simple examples. How can you help the purchasing department? Well, if you're purchasing a lot of widgets from different vendors, you might be able to identify for them the lowest price provider. That's one way. Number two, if you're purchasing a lot of widgets from different sources and maybe different units, maybe you have different locations, you can get that data all together and work with purchasing so they can go out and negotiate quantity discounts. And they may have other ideas about data that they could use that would help them do a better job. The same typical thing with the finance department and treasury when it comes to interest paid, how much they paid on loans. And when it comes to the budget department, you definitely have the information they need to do their budget versus actual. So you may be able to work with other departments. But even more important than that, and I would actually say before you do that, you want to look at your own shop. You want to take this data that you have and you want to look at it and see what process improvements you can make. So do it before somebody else does it, is what I like to say. So for example, we've talked about statement audits, and we've talked about duplicate payments. And when you make a duplicate payment, you want to get the credit for it, or you want to get the money back. And then you also want to investigate how this happened, why this happened, and what we have to change so it doesn't happen again. Probably the two biggest ones are lost early payment discounts and late fees. Okay, they stand out like a sore thumb, and they're really easy to find. So somebody in another department who's looking at the data may find it out, and then bring it up at a staff meeting. So you find it out first, you fix the problem, and then you don't have to worry about it. Likewise, when you're looking at your data after the fact, you may be able to identify some frauds, and as soon as you do that, you identify the fraud, you try and get the money back. You may or may not be able to. You need to figure out, what do we need to change so this doesn't happen again? Okay. We saw a lot of that about 2 or 3 years ago when organizations were not verifying any change of bank account requests for supposedly from suppliers who they were making ACH payments to. Okay, now let's talk about use of best practices. It's now the norm rather than the exception. You're not anything out of the ordinary or special if you're using best practices. We need to be using them, okay? Because when we don't use them, our accounts payable function gets more expensive, our controls get weakened, and then we end up either making duplicate payments or worse, falling for a fraud. Now, I want to be clear. There's a ton of best practices out there. I have a book, as you saw at the beginning, 127 best practices, and there's probably even more than that. No one uses them all. It's like saying, I exercise enough, I don't eat too much, I don't eat salt, I don't eat sugar, I don't drink, all this stuff. Yeah, in an ideal world, but nobody uses them all. But you do want to be using a good number of them. Because if you don't, then this is when your controls weaken, which allow fraud and duplicate payments. It also puts you at risk if you are subject to a Sarbanes-Oxley audit, which focuses on controls. So know that this is the exception rather than the rule. And I want to talk about exceptions that I see. I don't want to say commonly, but more often than we should. And the first one is the perfect separation of duties with one exception. A lot of times I'll talk to a company and they'll show me their separation of duties protocols, and it's exactly the way it should be. No one has access to more than one leg of the procure to pay chain, and they've got everything set up right. And then they say, oh, but we have one exception. I say, who's the exception? And they say, usually it's either the controller or the accounts payable manager or director of AP. And I say, well, why is this? And they say, well, this way they can step in if somebody's out. They can step in at the end of the month or the end of the quarter or the end of the fiscal year if we're running a little behind to get all the data entered. They can do training. And all of those answers are not bad answers. But when you don't have appropriate separation of duties, you then can end up with an employee who can perpetrate a fraud. And unfortunately, when that happens, it's usually a long-term trusted employee. The statistics for years have shown when there's an internal fraud, occupational fraud, employee fraud, whatever you want to call it, inevitably it's a long-term trusted employee. And what has happened is the company has let down their guard because we're having smaller and smaller staffs involved in all these functions. We sometimes have problems having appropriate separation of duties. So they're like, oh, Joe's been with us forever. He would never do anything. Or Jane's been with us forever. She would never do anything. And you know what? Occasionally they would. And then the company lives to pay the price. And it's not a pretty one. Okay, I want to talk about trend number 10, regulatory pressures. They are going to continue to grow. Now, we've probably all seen that the IRS has gotten extra funding. They've gotten $80 billion, which is supposed to be spread over 10 years. They got $8 billion, and they are using this actually to increase staffing. They're going to increase in what they call enforcements. You and I call it audits. And those enforcements are going to be focused on big companies, and what they call high net worth individuals. That is people who make more than $400,000 a year. Now, you're probably sitting there thinking, yeah, but didn't I see on the news that they're going to cut this increase in funding because of budget deficits, and I think money went to Israel, whatever it was. And that, yes, that is true, but the IRS is still getting more money. They are hiring more people. We need to make sure we do a good job, because if we're not, then we're going to be hit with fines and penalties. Be aware that when we do like our 1099 reporting, the IRS does not want our fines and penalties. What they want is good, accurate information so that they can collect all the money that they are entitled to, because the money that they can collect from taxes is a lot more than your fines or penalties. I've also talked about state 1099 reporting requirements. These are only going to increase. If you don't think you've done anything in this regard, you want to look at the state websites for those states where you have employees living. Not only employees, but independent contractors where you're hiring consultants, and make sure you're conforming with whatever you're supposed to do. The states are starting to use technology also. It's not just our companies and our accounts payable departments. And this is going to improve their efficiency, which means it's going to improve them finding when you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. Okay. Okay, let's talk about remote work and hybrid work and the return to the office. This battle rages on. And if you believed what you read in the paper, it seems like everybody is being forced to go back to the office. You see Elon Musk from Tesla and Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan Chase, and they're demanding that everyone goes back to the office, and they're going to fire them if they don't, and all that. But at the same time, those stories are getting headlines, and they are. You have companies like Neiman Marcus, who's dumped 500,000 feet of office space, not retail space, office space, and have no plans to make anyone return to the office. And there are many, many other organizations like that. When I talk to people, and I ask everybody when I see them, and I ask my family members, they're probably tired of, oh, here comes Aunt Mary, and she wants to know where we're working today. But I see that it seems to me that the hybrid situation is the most common. This will become a differentiator when it comes to attracting new workers. And so if you're having trouble attracting new workers, realize that some of them want to go to the office, some of them want to work from home, some of them want a hybrid, and it's going to be a real challenge to meet these needs. But if you're having trouble finding new quality workers, this can be the differentiator. This can be that allows you to get staff. I hear from people from time to time. It seems to me that there are a number of people who want to work in accounts payable who would like to be either remote or hybrid. So just put that in the back of your mind. And when I say, by the way, companies are quietly accommodating those who want to work hybrid, even though at those companies where you read in the popular press that everybody's got to be back in the office, I hear reports from HR people that they're doing things like they're not taking attendance. I hear from people that, yeah, they go in, they swipe their badge if that's being tracked, and then they leave, or they don't stay the whole day. So it's a whole new world. And as best you can adapt to it is as best you'll be able to maintain a motivated workforce. Okay, so just in case you haven't gotten it, trend number 12 is that skills enhancement is critical to all. Everybody, regardless of whether you are, a new person coming in or you're somebody with 30 years experience, there's not going to be no coasting for anybody. The skill set that you're going to need 5 years from now is going to be very different from the skill set that you're using today. And think about your own situation, especially if you've been in the same job for five or more years, or even 3 years. Are you still doing everything exactly the same as you did the day you walked in, 3 years or 5 years ago? Very few people will probably say, yes, it's exactly the same. I know I can tell you what I do is very different. And this change, this continual change, is probably going to be true for some time to come. I think this is the world that we can expect to live in, and it should be interesting. So I've talked about a lot of trends. Some of them you may agree with me, some not. Some of them will impact you. Let's take a look at what this means, okay? And as always, I'm going to start at the company level, but I'm going to talk about you individually. So think about your own department. How is that likely to change in the next 12 to 24 months? Which of the jobs are going to undergo the most change? Obviously, if the transactional jobs, or I think it's obvious, if you have a lot of transactional work, especially if you're starting with an automation solution, those jobs are going to change. Think about the workload and the responsibilities, and what can you add to the workload of those people whose workload is going to decrease? What new responsibilities? Now, if you say, well, for example, they can do the state 1099 reporting. I'm not sure that's a great example, but then the next step is, okay, well, what training do I have to get them? What additional training can I get? And also think about what analytical work can we be doing? And again, does the staff need any training for that? Do we need to take some Excel? Do we need to learn how to do pivot tables, etc.? There's a whole bunch of stuff. And I say Excel, but don't forget there's Google Sheets also. Okay, now think about yourself personally. We were talking about your department, your company, the accounts payable function. Think about your own job and try and be realistic. Try not to say, oh, nothing's going to change, because it will. Is there something that's going to be automated in your job? And will this leave you with some free time? And if it's going to relieve you with some free time, think about that list that you made. What would you like to add? You're in a much better shot to get what you'd like if you can say, hey, not that I think anybody's going to do this, but hey, I want to do the state 1099 reporting. And then you go and you look at the state websites and you update yourself and you know what you need to know. And then you can go to management and say, hey, I can take that on. I've studied that. I've done this, etc. Okay. So think about what you'd like to do, because you're at a point now, time now, where you're a little bit in the driver's seat. And then you need to evaluate your own skills. Do I have what it takes to take on that responsibility? And if not, what new skills do I think I'll need? And so you want to make your list and then start planning on how you're going to acquire them. Don't think, oh, I've got to go back to school. You don't. I mean, maybe you do, but the odds are high that you don't, that there is a way for you to acquire those skills on your own if you're so motivated and you can take the initiative. Now, I want to tell you about things that I hear from people. They say, I'm too old. Okay, can't teach an old dog new tricks. And my answer to you is no, you're not. Warren Buffett, God bless him, at age of 90, did his first PowerPoint presentation. This was during COVID. If you watch the halfway Berkshire annual meeting, which was online, he did it there. His partner, Charlie Munger, also did one. Charlie, I think, was 93 at the time, or 95, 95, I think, okay? If they can do that, you certainly can do whatever new skill you need to acquire. Now, people will say also, my company will never change. They aren't innovative at all. And that may be true. But you know what? Automation is now becoming commonplace. It's no longer considered to be innovative if you're automating your invoice processing or your accounts payable process, okay? That is now more commonplace because it's become less expensive, okay? And more user-friendly. And the next thing people say is, I don't have time. And my answer to that is set up a plan. And I'm going to show you how to set up a plan on the next slide. So I'm going to give you three options. You probably can come up with more, but here we go. The first one, I saw an article on this recently. It's called the 5-hour rule. And both Bill Gates and Oprah Winfrey swear by it. And I like it because I know myself, if I was to say, I'm going to sit down today, I'm going to spend 8 hours and I'm going to try and learn how to use Excel. Let's say I didn't know how to use Excel. By hour 3, my head would be spinning. But if I took 1 hour, 5 days a week, maybe I could learn it. Okay. So, and they both swear by this. So I'm a great believer in little chunks at a time. The next thing, I talk about the lunch hour. You can watch an educational YouTube video while you're eating lunch. Okay. You can do that every day. And you would be surprised what's on YouTube. Excel. We have a channel with over 500 accounts payable videos. You can look at the MHC website for their past videos. I am not talking about watching cat videos or whatever else catches your eye. You've got to be disciplined here. You've got to make your list, and then you've got to stick to it. My colleague Lynn Lawson has a cup of tea in the afternoon, but if you're a coffee person, that works just as well. And during that time, she reads an article or she watches a video every single day. It's 15 minutes. You have 15 minutes. And you can do this, okay? So these are all the different things that you can do. Some of them, as we discussed, are free. Some of them you'll have to pay for. Okay, so, and if you have to pay for them, don't forget to ask your company, or if it's a small amount, you can pay for it yourself. So let's start the poll. Where is your organization on its journey to go paperless with invoices? Okay, just invoices. We know we're all struggling with paper checks. Okay, and looking here, and I guess the majority of you are saying that you have started a process and you're kind of happy with it. only a few of you are saying what journey, okay? So I'm going to give you another few seconds and let's see. And then maybe we can open the floor to questions. Okay, I'll leave that up for a minute. And let's do this. Okay. And Sam, do we have questions?
Yes, we do have some questions that came in. So I'll start with the first one. What can we do about suppliers who insist on being paid with a paper check?
So this is a common problem. The first thing you can do, and this may not come up, but if for some reason they need a rush payment, your company policy should be we only make rush payments with ACH. And then when you make the rush payment with the ACH and they see how easy it is that it goes in their bank account, they don't have to wait for the check, you know all the benefits, they may agree. But assuming that's not the process, that's not happened, and you've talked to them, you've explained the benefits of it, this is what you can do. Once you've converted enough of your suppliers to ACH, you can say, okay, let's say you currently do weekly check runs. We are going to continue to do ACH runs weekly, but we're only going to issue paper checks once every 2 weeks. And you can do that. And then you can point this out to them. We'd love to pay you, but we're not doing another check run until. You will get to the point where you'll have converted a large number. Also, periodically go back and talk to these guys because some of them may change their mind. They may get a new CFO. Who knows what happens? But keep talking to them and make it more attractive to get paid with an ACH than with a check.
Great. This question just came in. Are there any industry organizations that an AP professional should belong to? And what events should I attend in person?
That is a good question, but really I'm not qualified to talk about events, live events. I would not be, it would not be a plus for me to answer that. But go on LinkedIn and look for accounts payable organizations. You should be able to find many of them. I don't want to, give a plug to one and not another.
Great. Okay, and we can always follow up with some events that MHC will be attending as well.
Yes, and you might even be in a better position to answer that than I am.
Great. Yes, we'll follow up with this person
Okay.
specifically about events that MHC will be attending. Great. I think we have time for another couple questions here. The next question that came in is our state is part of the combined federal state reporting system. That means we don't have to be concerned about the 1099 reporting. Is that correct?
No, no. So first of all, I want you to be careful when you say our state, because you may be thinking of our state is the state that you're located in. So, for example, if you work in New York City, in Manhattan, where I spent a large part of my career, people who worked in New York City may live in New York State, they may live in New Jersey, they may also live in Connecticut. They all commute into New York State. So in that case, your state, even though you're is New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, you'd have to do your 1099 reporting if it was required in those 3 states. And you'd have to make sure that those 3 states were part of the combined program. Additionally, some states, even if they are part of the combined program, their 1099 requirements are different. You need to look at that. Some states are coming out of the program, so there's that consideration. And also, when you hire somebody who you're paying as an independent contractor, typically they are remote, not always, but typically they're not coming into your office. So they may be in Oregon or they might be in Texas. You're not really, I can guarantee when they are being hired, the department that's hiring them is not thinking, oh, I'm worried that accounts payable might have to do some 1099 reporting. That is nowhere on their radar.
Great. Awesome. And then the moving on, just we have enough time here. The next question is we are moving to an SAP system with some automation tools in the near future. In the meantime, we have a very manual process. What is the best practice for structuring my organization? Should we be structured by vendor, letter group, or by task?
So not most, many companies structure um, the invoice processing by letter. And the reason they do the letter is it's then when an invoice shows up, it's easy to tell who to give it to. Oh, Macy starts with an M, it goes to whoever. However, that's not always the most efficient way because you might want to assign tasks so that somebody who will handle all of one type of invoice that might require special knowledge. There's no right or wrong way to do it. You just need to be consistent, and a lot will depend upon your organization. So I know that's not the answer that you wanted. If you're going to SAP in the short term, I would say don't make any more changes. Whatever you're doing now, just stick with it because you don't want to make it's going to be a change when you go to SAP, and then you don't want to make another change in the interim.
Awesome. Well, that looks like we are at our time right now. So just want to thank you, Mary, for joining us today, and thank you all for attending. If you're interested in learning more about what's going on at MHC, you can register for our monthly newsletter. That way, you'll receive reminders about upcoming webinars and interesting thought leadership, like our great session today. And a link will be included with our follow-up email, so be sure to register. Awesome. Thanks again,
That's
Mary.
that's a great newsletter to sign up for. Just saying.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks. Good luck, everyone.